Commander Ryan Mitchell had seen many strange things in his 15 years of flying through space. He had watched stars die. He had walked on planets where the sky burned orange and the rain fell upward. He had met aliens of all shapes and sizes, some friendly and some not so friendly. But nothing in all his years of travel had prepared him for this moment. He stood in the great hall of Station Omega 7, a massive space station that floated at the edge of human territory. The hall was full of diplomats and officers from Earth. They all wore their best uniforms and their most serious faces. But Ryan was not looking at any of them. He was looking at the alien woman who had just walked through the doors. Queen Siritha of the Valanti Empire was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin the color of deep violet and eyes like polished silver. She moved like water flowing over rocks, smooth and graceful and powerful all at once. Her robe seemed to be made of starlight itself, shifting and glowing with every step she took. Behind her walked 6 guards in gleaming armor, each one carrying weapons that could cut through steel like paper. The Valanti were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the known galaxy. They had been building starships when humans were still living in caves. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and ruled over billions of beings. And they had never, not once in their long history, shown much interest in humanity. To them, humans were young and weak and not worth their time. So when word came that the Valanti Queen herself wanted to meet with a human commander, everyone was surprised. When they learned which commander she wanted, Ryan Mitchell, they were even more confused. Ryan was a good officer, but he was not famous. He was not a war hero or a great diplomat. He was just a man who flew a ship called the Horizon and tried to do his job well. He had no idea why the most powerful woman in the galaxy wanted to speak with him. Now, standing in that great hall with all eyes upon him, he was about to find out. Queen Siritha stopped a few feet away from him. Her silver eyes studied his face for a long moment. Ryan felt like she was looking straight through him, seeing things about himself that even he did not know. "Commander Mitchell," she said. Her voice was soft but clear, like bells ringing in a quiet room. "Do you remember what happened 3 years ago, near the black hole designated V7? Ryan blinked. He had not expected that question. "Yes, Your Majesty. There was a Valanti colony ship. Their engines failed, and they were being pulled toward the black hole. My crew and I managed to reach them in time. We towed them to safety." "You risked your ship," the Queen said. "You risked your crew. The mathematics said you would not reach them in time. Your own commanders ordered you to turn back. But you did not listen." "No, Your Majesty. I did not." "Why?" Ryan thought about it. At the time, he had not really thought about it at all. He had just acted. "Because there were 2,000 people on that ship," he said, finally. 2,000 lives. I could not just watch them die when there was even a small chance I could help." The Queen nodded slowly. Something changed in her silver eyes. Something Ryan could not quite name. "My husband is dead," she said. The words hung in the air. Ryan heard gasps from the diplomats behind him. Emperor Kethfer had been the ruler of the Valanti Empire for over 200 years. His death was news that would shake the entire galaxy. "I am sorry for your loss," Ryan said, because he did not know what else to say. "There is a tradition among my people," the Queen continued. "When a ruler loses their partner, they must find a temporary consort within one solar cycle. Someone to stand beside them during the morning rituals. Someone to help them maintain stability while they grieve. If they do not, the throne passes to the next noble house in line." Ryan nodded, not sure where this was going. "The next house in line is House Dravok," Siritha said. "They are led by a man named Lord Malvoice. He wants war. He wants to expand our empire by force. He wants to conquer your people, Commander Mitchell, along with many others. My husband spent his entire reign keeping the peace. If Maldois takes the throne, everything my husband worked for will be destroyed. That sounds very dangerous, Ryan said carefully. It is. The queen took a step closer to him. I need a consort. I need someone to stand beside me for 90 days while I complete the morning rituals and secure my position. And I want that someone to be you. For a moment, Ryan was sure he had heard wrong. The queen of the Volanthi Empire, one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, was asking him to be her partner. Him, a simple human commander. Your Majesty, he said slowly, I am honored, but I do not understand. Why me? You could choose anyone. Any noble from your own people would surely be a better choice. My nobles are all connected to the great houses, Sirida replied. Choosing any of them would mean choosing sides in the political games they play. It would create more problems than it would solve. But you are human. You are outside our politics. You own nothing to any of the houses. But your people look down on humans, Ryan said. Will they not be angry that you chose one of us? Some will be angry. But I am the queen. I can choose whoever I wish. She paused. And there is another reason I chose you, Commander Mitchell. 3 years ago, you saved 2,000 of my people. You did not do it for reward or for politics. You did it because it was the right thing to do. Your species has something that mine has forgotten. You have compassion that does not calculate the cost. I need that beside me now. Ryan looked at the diplomats behind him. Their eyes were wide. He could almost hear them thinking about what this could mean for humanity. An alliance with the Volanthi Empire would change everything. It would give humans protection, technology, trade routes. It would lift humanity from a small young species to a major player in galactic politics. He looked back at the queen. There was something in her eyes that he had not seen at first. Behind all the power and the grace, there was pain. She had just lost her husband. She was surrounded by enemies who wanted to take everything she had. And she had come to him, a human, because she believed he might be different from the others. 90 days, Ryan said. 90 days, the queen confirmed. Nothing more. At the end of that time, you may return to your people and your ship. You will owe me nothing, and I will owe you nothing. Do we have an agreement? Ryan took a deep breath. He thought about his ship, his crew, his life. He thought about the 2,000 people he had saved 3 years ago and how he had never expected anything in return. He reached out and took the queen's hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, like touching polished stone. We have an agreement, he said. The queen smiled. It was a small smile, tired and sad, but it was real. Neither of them knew, in that moment, how much everything was about to change. The Volanthi homeworld was called Etheria, and it was the most beautiful place Ryan had ever seen. The ship that brought him there flew through clouds of purple and gold. Below, great cities spread across the land like jewels scattered on velvet. Towers made of crystal reached up toward the sky, catching the light of the 2 suns and turning it into rainbows. Some of the cities floated in the air, held up by technology that humans could only dream about. Ryan pressed his face to the window like a child. He had traveled to many worlds, but none of them looked like this. Etheria was a place built by a people who had thousands of years to perfect their craft. Every building was a work of art. Every street was clean and beautiful. Even the air, when they finally landed and he stepped outside, smelled sweet and fresh. But Ryan quickly learned that not everything on Etheria was as beautiful as it looked. The royal palace was a massive structure of white stone and blue crystal. It had 1,000 rooms, each one more grand than the last. Servants moved through the halls like ghosts, silent and quick. And everywhere Ryan went, he felt eyes watching him. The Volanthi nobles did not hide their feelings about him. They stared at him with cold eyes and whispered behind their hands when he walked past. Some of them laughed openly. A human in the royal palace? It was a joke to them. A bad joke. You should not let them bother you, Queen Suritha told him on his first night. They were eating dinner in a private room, just the two of them. The food was strange but good, and Ryan was trying hard not to make a mess. The nobles are like children. They test everyone to see how they will react. I am not bothered, Ryan said, even though he was a little. I have dealt with people who did not want me around before. The queen studied him with those silver eyes. You are stronger than you look, she said. That is good. You will need to be strong in the days ahead. She was right. The days ahead were hard. Ryan's job was supposed to be simple. He was supposed to stand beside the queen during ceremonies. He was supposed to smile and nod and look like he belonged there. He was not supposed to actually do anything important, but it did not work out that way. On the 5th day, there was a great feast in the main hall. All the noble houses were there, hundreds of Volanti in their finest clothes, eating and drinking and trying to win favor with the queen. Ryan sat beside Suritha at the high table, feeling very out of place. Halfway through the meal, a servant brought the queen a golden cup filled with dark red wine. Ryan watched as she lifted it toward her lips. And then he saw something that made his blood turn cold. The servant who had brought the cup was sweating. His hands were shaking, and there was a strange smell coming from the wine, so faint that most people would not notice it. But Ryan had grown up on a farm on Earth, and he knew the smell of poison when he caught it. Stop, he said, reaching out and grabbing the queen's arm. The whole hall went silent. Every eye turned to look at him. The queen stared at him with surprise. The wine, Ryan said quietly. Something is wrong with it. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the queen raised her hand and called for her guards. They took the cup and tested it. 5 minutes later, they confirmed what Ryan already knew. The wine had been poisoned. If the queen had drunk it, she would have died within hours. The servant who had brought the cup was arrested. He broke down quickly and confessed that he had been paid by someone in House Dravok. Lord Maldois, when questioned, denied everything. There was no proof linking him to the crime. But everyone knew the truth. After that night, everything changed. The nobles stopped laughing at Ryan. They started to look at him differently. The human who had saved the queen. The human who had seen what none of them had seen. Maybe he was not such a joke after all. The queen changed too. She had been cold and distant with Ryan at first, treating him politely but keeping her walls up high. Now she began to talk to him more openly. She asked him about his life on Earth, about his family, about his dreams. She listened when he spoke, really listened, in a way that made him feel like what he said mattered. You saved my life, she told him one evening. They were walking in the royal gardens under 3 moons that hung in the sky like silver coins. I chose you because I thought you would be useful. I did not expect you to actually protect me. It was nothing, Ryan said. I just noticed something was wrong. It was not nothing. The queen stopped walking and turned to face him. The nobles in that room, they all wanted something from me. Power, money, influence. Not one of them would have cared if I died. Some of them probably wished I would. But you, a human, a stranger, you cared enough to pay attention, to notice, to act. Ryan did not know what to say. He looked at the queen, at her violet skin glowing softly in the moonlight, and her silver eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies within them. She was not just beautiful. She was strong and sad and tired. A woman carrying the weight of an empire on her shoulders. Your husband, he said carefully. You loved him very much. The queen was quiet for a long moment. Yes, she finally said. I did. We were married for 140 years. He was kind and wise, and he made me laugh. When he died, I thought my heart would break into pieces." She paused. "But I am a queen. I do not have the luxury of grief. I must keep moving forward, no matter how much it hurts." "That sounds lonely," Ryan said. The queen laughed softly. It was a sad sound. "It is. Very lonely." They stood there in the garden, two people from different worlds, both carrying their own burdens. And something passed between them in that moment, something neither of them could name. The days continued to pass. 20 days. 30 days. 40 days. Ryan found himself being pulled deeper into the life of the palace. The nobles who had once ignored him now came to him for advice. The queen brought him to council meetings and asked for his opinion. He was supposed to be decoration, a symbol, nothing more. But somehow he had become something else. Something real, and his feelings for the queen were changing, too. He watched her argue with stubborn nobles and fight for what she believed was right. He watched her visit the sick and the poor, touching their hands and giving them hope. He watched her cry alone in her chambers when she thought no one was looking, grieving for the husband she had lost. She was not just a queen to him anymore. She was Siritha, a woman, a person. On the 45th day, they were in the garden again. The moons were full and bright, and the flowers around them glowed with soft light. "I should tell you something," the queen said. Her voice was different tonight, softer, uncertain. "What is it?" Ryan asked. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped forward and pressed her lips to his dot. The kiss was gentle and brief, barely more than a touch. But it sent fire rushing through Ryan's body. When she pulled back, there were tears in her silver eyes. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I should not have done that. You are only here for 90 days. It is not fair to either of us." Ryan reached out and took her hand. "Maybe not," he said. "But I do not care about fair." He kissed her again, and this time neither of them pulled away. They both knew their agreement would end soon. They both knew he would have to leave. But in that moment, under the light of 3 moons, none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was that they had found each other. Lord Malthus was not a patient man. He had waited too long for the throne, and now he watched it slipping away. The human was ruining everything. The common people loved him. Some of the nobles were starting to respect him. Even the queen, who was supposed to be using him as a tool, had clearly fallen for him. Malthus could see it in her eyes whenever she looked at the human. It made him sick. With 17 days left in the official consort period, Malthus decided he had waited long enough. He went to the temple of the high priests and demanded to see the ancient books. He searched through them for 3 days and 3 nights. And finally, he found what he was looking for, the right of Calvth. It was an old law, so old that most people had forgotten it existed. Under this law, any noble could challenge a royal consort for the right to stand beside the queen. The challenge could not be refused. And if the consort lost, they would have to leave the palace forever. Malthus smiled when he read those words. The right had not been used in over 500 years, but it was still valid. And he was going to use it to destroy the human once and for all. The next morning, he walked into the throne room and announced his challenge in front of the entire court. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at him, then at Ryan, then at the queen. Queen Siritha's face went pale. "You cannot do this," she said. "The right of Calvth is ancient history." "It is still law," Malthus replied with a cold smile. "I have checked with the high priests. They have confirmed that the right is valid. The human must accept my challenge or leave the palace in shame." Ryan stepped forward. "What does this challenge involve?" Malthus looked at him with contempt. 3 trials. The first is a test of physical strength. The second is a test of strategy and war. The third is a test of moral judgment. The challenger. Who performs best across all 3 trials wins the right to be the queen's consort. And if I refuse, then you admit that you are not worthy. You leave the palace, and you never return. The queen will be forced to choose a new consort from the noble houses. Maldois paused. From my house. The room buzzed with whispers. Ryan looked at the queen. She was shaking her head slightly, telling him not to accept. But he could also see the fear in her eyes. If he refused, Maldois won anyway. The only way to stop him was to fight. That night, the queen came to Ryan's room. Her face was wet with tears. "You cannot do this," she said. "Maldois is a trained warrior. He has killed dozens of enemies in battle. He will destroy you in the physical trial." "Probably," Ryan admitted. "Then why? Why would you accept?" Ryan took her hands. "Because if I refuse, everything we have built falls apart. Maldois takes the throne. He starts his wars. All those people in the lower cities who believed in us, they lose hope. And you." He paused. "You lose everything." "I would rather lose everything than lose you," Suritha whispered. "I know," Ryan said, "but I am not going to let that happen. The right has 3 trials, not just 1. I might lose the first, but I can still win the others. I have to try." The queen looked at him for a long moment. Then she kissed him, hard and desperate, like she was afraid it might be the last time. "Then win," she said. "Promise me you will win." "I promise I will do everything I can." 3 days later, the trials began. The first trial was held in the great arena of the palace. Thousands of Volanthi came to watch. They filled the seats and cheered as Lord Maldois walked onto the sand. He was huge, nearly 8 feet tall, with muscles that looked like they were carved from stone. He carried no weapons. In this trial, none were allowed. Ryan walked out to face him. He looked small and weak compared to the Volanthi warrior. Some people in the crowd laughed. Others looked away, unable to watch what was about to happen. The fight was over quickly. Maldois hit Ryan 3 times, and each hit sent the human flying across the sand. Ryan got up after the first hit. He got up after the second. But after the third, he could not get up anymore. He lay on the ground, blood dripping from his mouth, his body broken. Maldois stood over him and laughed. "This is the best humanity can offer. This weak creature? I am almost embarrassed to fight him." But then something happened that made the crowd go quiet. Ryan moved. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself up onto his hands and knees. Then he got 1 foot under him, then the other. He stood up, swaying, barely able to stay on his feet. "I yield," he said, his voice rough with pain. "But I yield standing, not lying down." The crowd was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, they began to clap. Even some of the nobles who hated Ryan had to admire his courage. He had lost the physical trial, yes, but he had earned something more valuable than a victory. He had earned respect. The second trial was held the next day. It was a war simulation, played out on a giant table with holographic ships and armies. Each challenger had to defend a planet against an invading fleet. The one who held out longer would win. Maldois went first. His strategy was aggressive and brutal. He met the enemy head-on, throwing his ships at them in wave after wave of attacks. His planet took heavy damage, but he eventually drove the invaders away. The nobles cheered. It was a classic Volanthi victory. Then it was Ryan's turn. His strategy was completely different. Instead of attacking the enemy directly, he hid his ships behind moons and asteroids. He used small, fast ships to hit the enemy supply lines. He sent fake signals to confuse their sensors. He made them think he was weak, and then, when they were stretched thin, he struck at their heart. His planet took almost no damage. The invaders were defeated in half the time it took Maldois. The nobles stared at the table in shock. The human had not just won. He had made the greatest warrior in the empire look like a fool. "Tricks," Maldois spat. cowardly tricks. A true warrior faces his enemy directly. A true leader protects his people, Ryan replied calmly. I would rather win with tricks than lose with honor. The crowd whispered. Some agreed with Maldois. But others, especially those who had seen their sons and brothers die in foolish wars, thought Ryan had a point. The trials were tied, one victory each. Everything came down to the third trial. The moral trial was conducted by the high priests in the temple. Both challengers were brought to a great chamber lit by floating candles. The head priest, an ancient Volanthi named Orathko, stood before them. The final trial is a test of judgment, he said. I will present a scenario, and each of you will answer. There is no right or wrong answer. We will judge you based on your reasoning and your heart. He raised his hands, and images appeared in the air before them. A planet, green and beautiful. 10,000 people living in a colony. And 2 ships approaching. This colony is dying, Orathko said. A plague has struck them, and they have only days left. There are 2 ships that can reach them in time. The first ship carries medical supplies, enough to save most of the colony, but not all. The second ship carries weapons, to defend against raiders who are also coming to attack the weakened colony. You can only send 1 ship. Which do you choose? Maldois answered without hesitation. The weapons. The strong will survive the plague. The weak were going to die anyway. But without defense, the raiders will kill everyone. Save the strong, and you save the colony. The priest wrote down his answer. Then they turned to Ryan. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the images, floating in the air, at the faces of the people in the colony. I would send the medical supplies, he said finally. And the raiders? Orathko asked. I would find another way to deal with them. Contact nearby planets for help. Negotiate. Fight them myself if I had to. But I would not let people die of a sickness that I could cure just because I was afraid of what might happen later. What if there was no other way? The priest pressed. What if sending the medicine meant the raiders would definitely attack? Ryan looked at him steadily. Then I would still send the medicine. The measure of a ruler is not how many enemies they can kill. It is how many of their own people they can save. You do not sacrifice the weak to protect the strong. You protect everyone, or you are not worthy of being the leader at all. The chamber was silent. The priests looked at each other. Then they wrote down their notes. The trials are concluded, Orathko announced. We will deliberate tonight. Tomorrow, at dawn, we will announce our decision. That night, Ryan could not sleep. He sat in his room, staring out at the moons, wondering if he had done enough. The queen came to him in the dark hours before dawn. She held him close and did not say anything. There was nothing to say. Everything they had, everything they hoped for, it all came down to whatever the priests decided. When the sun rose, they walked to the throne room together, hand in hand. Whatever happened next, they would face it as one. The throne room had never been so crowded. Nobles filled every corner, dressed in their finest clothes, their faces tight with worry or excitement or both. Common people packed the spaces between them, standing shoulder to shoulder, craning their necks to see. Diplomats from a dozen alien species watched from the balconies above. And in one small corner, a group of humans from Earth stood together, their eyes fixed on the man they had come to support. Ryan walked through the crowd with Queen Siritha beside him. His body still ached from the beating Maldois had given him 2 days ago. Every step hurt. But he kept his back straight and his head high. He would not show weakness. Not now. Not ever. Lord Maldois was already standing before the throne, his arms crossed, a smile on his face. He looked confident. He looked like a man who already knew he had won. The high priests entered from a side door. There were 7 of them, all old, all dressed in white robes that glowed softly in the morning light. The head priest, Orathko, carried a scroll in his hands. the scroll that held the answer to everything. The crowd went silent. Ryan could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Oracle stepped forward. His voice was old but strong, and it carried to every corner of the room. "We have deliberated through the night," he said. "The right of Calveth demands that we judge not just strength or cleverness, but the total worth of each challenger as a potential consort to our queen." He turned to look at Maldois. Lord Maldois showed great strength in the physical trial. He is a warrior without equal in our empire. In times of war, such a man would be valuable at the queen's side. Maldois nodded, his smile growing wider. Then Oracle turned to Ryan. Commander Mitchell showed courage in defeat. Though he could not match Lord Maldois in strength, he refused to surrender while he could still stand. This is a rare quality, one that speaks to the depth of his spirit. He paused, looking down at the scroll in his hands. In the strategic trial, Commander Mitchell showed a different kind of strength. He used wisdom instead of force. He protected his people instead of sacrificing them. Some might call this cowardice. We call it leadership. Maldois' smile began to fade. But it is the moral trial that carries the greatest weight, Oracle continued. For it is in our choices, not our victories, that we reveal who we truly are. He unrolled the scroll and began to read. Lord Maldois chose to let the sick die and protect the strong. It is a practical choice, a logical choice. Many of our greatest leaders might have made the same decision. He looked up at Maldois. But it is not the choice of a ruler who loves his people. It is the choice of a ruler who sees them as tools. Maldois' face went red with anger. That is not fair. I was being realistic. Perhaps, Oracle said calmly. But the right does not ask us to judge what is realistic. It asks us to judge what is right. He turned to Ryan. Commander Mitchell chose to save the sick, even knowing that it might leave his people defenseless. When we asked him why, he said that a ruler's duty is to protect everyone, not just the strong. He said that you do not measure a leader by how many enemies they kill, but by how many of their own people they save. The old priest's voice softened. These words reminded us of something we had forgotten. They reminded us of what the Volanti were before we became conquerors. They reminded us of the emperors and queens who built this empire not through war, but through love for their people. He rolled up the scroll. The decision of the high priests is unanimous. The right of Calveth is decided. Ryan Mitchell is recognized as the rightful consort of Queen Siritha. For a moment, the room was completely silent. Then it exploded. The common people cheered so loud that the crystal wall shook. They shouted Ryan's name, shouted Kelleran, shouted words of joy and hope that they had never dared to speak before. Some of the nobles looked angry, others looked thoughtful, and a small few, joined the cheering. Lord Maldois screamed in rage. He stepped toward Ryan, his hands raised like claws. This is wrong. This is an insult to everything we are. A human cannot be our queen's consort. I will never accept this. The royal guards moved forward, their weapons raised. Maldois looked around, seeing no allies, no support. For a moment, it seemed like he might fight anyway. But then the anger drained out of him, replaced by something cold and dark. This is not over, he said quietly. You may have won today, human, but there will be other days, and I will be waiting. The guards escorted him out of the throne room. As he passed Ryan, he leaned close and whispered, Enjoy your victory while it lasts. Ryan watched him go. He knew Maldois was right. There would be more challenges, more enemies, more battles to fight. But that was a problem for another day. Today, he had won. He turned to look at Siritha. She was standing frozen, tears streaming down her violet face, her silver eyes shining brighter than he had ever seen them. He walked to her, took her hands, and pulled her close. We did it, he said softly. You did it, she whispered back. You wonderful, impossible human. That night, there was a celebration in the palace. Music and dancing and food and wine. The common people were invited, something that had never happened before. They came in their simple clothes and their worn shoes, and they danced beside nobles in silk and jewels. For one night, the walls between high and low came down. Ryan stood on a balcony, watching the celebration below. His body was tired, and his mind was full, but his heart was lighter than it had ever been. Sirida found him there, as he knew she would. She stood beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. The 90 days end tomorrow, Ryan said quietly. The agreement we made. It will be over. Yes, the Queen said. The agreement will be over. She turned to face him. There was something different in her eyes now, something fierce and determined. The agreement was that you would be my temporary partner for the mourning period, she said. That period is finished. According to our deal, you are free to return to Earth. To your ship. To your old life. Ryan nodded slowly. He had known this was coming. He had known from the beginning that this day would arrive. But I find myself unwilling to let you go, Sirida continued. Her voice was stronger now, carrying the authority of a queen. This world, my world, it has become better because you are in it. You have shown my people what it means to truly care for others. You have shown me what it means to be loved not for my crown, but for myself. She took his hands and held them tight. I am not asking you to stay because of duty or politics. I am asking because I love you. Because my life is better with you in it. Because when I think about the future, I cannot imagine it without you by my side. Her silver eyes were wet with tears. I refuse to let go of my world. And you have become part of it. The most important part. Ryan looked at her. He thought about Earth, about the stars, about the ship that had been his home for so many years. He thought about all the things he would be leaving behind. And then he thought about her strength and her kindness and her courage, about the way she laughed when no one was watching, about the way she looked at him like he was the most precious thing in the universe. It was not a hard choice at all. Then I suppose I am staying, he said. Sirida's face broke into a smile so bright it could have lit up the darkest corner of space. She threw her arms around him and held him like she would never let go, as she never did in the years that followed. The galaxy watched in amazement as the Volanthi Empire changed. The wars that everyone expected never came. Instead, there was peace. Trade grew. The lower cities were rebuilt. The common people rose up not in revolution, but in hope. And at the center of it all was a human. A simple man from a small planet, who had done nothing special except be kind, be brave, and refuse to give up. Earth celebrated him as a hero. They called him humanity's first ambassador to the stars, the man who proved that humans belonged in the galaxy. But Ryan never cared about the titles or the fame. He only cared about the woman beside him and the people they served together. The Volanthi had spent centuries looking down on humanity. They had waited for the young species to prove their worth, never expecting much. They never expected a single human to prove it by teaching an empire how to love again. But that is what humans do. They walk into impossible situations. They face enemies they cannot beat. They love people they were never supposed to meet. And somehow, against all odds, they change everything. Ryan Mitchell had come to the stars looking for adventure. He found something better. He found home. News travels fast in the galaxy, especially when it is strange news. Within days of Ryan saving the Queen from poison, stories about him began to spread. They moved from ship to ship, station to station, world to world. A human was living in the Volanthi royal palace. A human was standing beside the Queen. A human had saved her life when her own nobles had tried to kill her. Some people laughed at the stories. Others were curious. But everyone was talking. On Earth, the reaction was mixed. Some people were proud that a human had risen so high. Others were worried. The Volanthi were powerful and dangerous, and getting involved with them could bring trouble. But everyone agreed on one thing. Whatever Ryan Mitchell was doing out there, he was putting humanity on the map. Ryan did not think much about any of this. He was too busy trying to survive. After the assassination attempt, the Queen began to bring him to more meetings. She asked him to sit beside her during councils and ceremonies. At first, he just listened. The Volanthi nobles talked about trade routes and military movements and political games that made his head spin. He felt like a fish trying to understand birds, but Ryan was a quick learner. And he started to notice something. The Volanthi Empire was not as strong as it looked. Yes, they had great cities and powerful weapons. Yes, they had been building starships for thousands of years. But their society was cracked down the middle. The noble houses fought with each other constantly. They cared more about power and status than about the people they ruled. And those people, the common Volanthi who lived in the lower cities and worked in the factories and farms, they were suffering. Ryan saw it when he looked out the palace windows. Below the floating cities, there were other cities on the ground. They were not made of crystal and light. They were made of metal and concrete, gray and dull and crowded. The people who lived there worked hard and had little. They looked up at the floating palaces above them and wondered why the nobles never looked down. One day, Ryan asked the Queen if he could visit the lower cities. She looked at him like he had grown a second head. "Why would you want to go there?" "Because I want to see," Ryan said. "I want to understand." The Queen thought about it. No royal consort had gone to the lower cities in 300 years. It was considered beneath them. But she had learned by now that Ryan was not like other consorts. "Very well," she said. "I will come with you." They went together with a small group of guards. The Queen wore simple clothes so she would not be recognized. But it did not matter. The common Volanthi knew their Queen's face. When she walked through the narrow streets, they stopped and stared. Some of them fell to their knees. Others ran away to hide. Ryan walked beside her, watching everything. He saw the small houses where families of 10 lived in 2 rooms. He saw the markets where people sold vegetables that were half-rotten. He saw children playing in dirty streets, their clothes torn and their faces thin. "How long has it been like this?" he asked. "For as long as I can remember," the Queen admitted. She looked around with sad eyes. The noble houses control most of the wealth. The common people get what is left over. "That is not right," Ryan said. "No, it is not. But changing it is very difficult." The noble houses did not want to give up their power. Ryan thought about this for a long time. And then he had an idea. At the next council meeting, he asked to speak. The nobles looked at him with surprise. The human wanted to say something? How amusing. They settled back in their chairs, ready to be entertained. Ryan stood up and looked around the room. "I have been learning about your empire," he said. "It is very impressive. You have technology that my people can only dream about. You have conquered many worlds. You are one of the most powerful species in the galaxy." The nobles nodded. Yes, they knew all this. "But I have also been learning about your problems," Ryan continued. "Your people in the lower cities are hungry. Your farms do not produce enough food. Your factories are old and breaking down. You spend so much money on your military that there is nothing left for anything else." The smiles faded from the nobles' faces. "Where I come from," Ryan said, "we learned a long time ago that an empire is only as strong as its weakest citizen. You can conquer 1,000 worlds. But if your own people are starving, you have nothing worth protecting." Lord Malloy stood up, his face angry. "And what would a human know about running an empire? Your species is barely out of your cradle." "That is true," Ryan admitted. "We are young. We have made many mistakes, but we have also learned from those mistakes. And one thing we learned is that taking care of your people is not weakness. It is strength. He turned to the queen. I would like to propose something. On Earth, we have a way of growing food in tall buildings, one on top of the other. It does not take much space, and it produces a lot of food. I believe this could work in your lower cities. It would not cost much to build, and it would feed many people. The council room exploded into argument. Some nobles said it was a stupid idea. Others said it might work. Lord Malvoisin said the common people did not deserve such attention. But the queen raised her hand, and everyone fell silent. We will try it, she said. In one city, as a test. Commander Mitchell will oversee the project. Ryan worked on the project for weeks. He brought in experts from Earth through the communication channels. He worked with Volanti engineers to adapt the technology. He went to the lower cities every day, talking to the people there, learning what they needed. The Volanti common people did not know what to make of him at first. A human? Working to help them? It seemed impossible. But Ryan did not give up. He smiled at them. He learned their names. He played with their children. Slowly, they began to trust him. When the first farming tower was finished, the whole lower city came to see it. Green plants grew on every level, reaching up toward the light. There was more food than they had ever seen. And it was for them that the people cheered. They shouted Ryan's name. They called him Kel Oren, which in their language meant, he who sees us. For the first time in generations, someone from the crystal towers above had looked down and actually seen them. News of the farming tower spread across Ethoria. Other lower cities asked for the same technology. The common people began to speak of the human consort with love and respect. And the noble houses who had once laughed at Ryan began to fear him. The queen watched all of this happen. She watched Ryan work himself to exhaustion for people he had never met. She watched him refuse rewards and titles, saying he did not do this for glory. She watched him treat every person, noble or common, with the same respect and kindness, and she fell deeper in love with him every day. On the 73rd day of their agreement, she found him on a balcony, looking out at the city below. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Ryan, she said softly. He turned to look at her. He was tired. She could see, but there was a light in his eyes that had not been there before. I need to tell you something, she said. I should have said it a long time ago. She took his hands in hers. They were rough from work, this human who had soft hands when he first arrived. I love you, she said. I did not expect to. I did not want to. You were supposed to be temporary, a tool to help me keep my throne. But somewhere along the way, you became something more. You became everything. Ryan looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled her close and held her tight. I love you too, he whispered into her hair. I think I have loved you since that first night in the garden. They stood there together as the sun set, two hearts beating as one. The agreement said 17 more days. After that, Ryan was supposed to leave, but both of them knew, in that moment, that leaving was going to be impossible.